Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says restructuring the tribunal system. We have the central government which had recently passed an ordinance called as Tribunal Reforms Rationalization and Conditions of Service Ordinance of 2021. According to this ordinance passed by the central government, all the appellate tribunals that were present in number of tribunals are completely abolished, and these powers that were given to the appellate tribunals will now be transferred to the judiciary. What is this abolition? How powers have been transferred to the judiciary? What were the powers earlier given to the appellate tribunals? Have all been explained on 11th of April 2021 under the first topic, the abolition of FCAT. Kindly look into the video. What are we going to discuss today? We would focus about the criticisms of this very initiative taken by the central government. What are the various criticisms and concerns with respect to the abolition of the appellate tribunals when it comes to the tribunals in India? When it comes to the tribunals in India, we have the tribunals. They also pass their own orders and judgments. After that, there was an intermediary step called as the appellate tribunal. Then the person, in case he is not happy with that particular judgment, was heading to the judiciary for the further processing and the judgment. But in the present situation, because of the ordinance, the intermediary step or the appellate tribunal that we had is completely done away, and all the powers have been given to the judiciary. So this abolition has created certain concerns and issues. What are these concerns? First, let's take one of the examples. We have the Film Certification Appellate Tribunal. What is it? It is one of the appellate tribunal that which was in reference to the censor board. But when such an abolition is happening with respect to one of the offices and the tribunals, what we require is the stakeholder consultation. Who are the stakeholders in this particular case? You should have either consulted the film fraternity, you should have consulted the directors and all those people who are involved in the film making. When such an abolition order is being brought about by the government, what we require is the stakeholder consultation. In this particular case, the government has not consulted the stakeholder, which means it was bypassing the usual legislative process, is the first major criticism. We have the Supreme Court of India. It had delivered a landmark judgment in Roger Matthew versus the South Indian Bank. What was this judgment all about? Let's say there is a tribunal which is created by the law of the parliament, and when there is abolition of the tribunal or any of the appellate tribunals in place, what the government should do is to find out what is the judicial impact assessment all about. In the present situation, the central government has not done this judicial impact assessment, is the second criticism. Now you might ask me a question. The question is, what is this judicial impact assessment? Let me explain this process for you. Let's say, as we all know, there are three organs of the state. What are these three organs? We have the legislature, we have the executive, we also have the judiciary. Who makes the laws in India? It is the legislature. So when a law is being created, a law is being drafted, there is a particular objective as to why that particular law is being drafted. It has to meet a particular objective. When there is a creation of a law, there might be issues in the law as well. When there are issues in the law, where do we go? We head to the judiciary. So when we go to the judiciary, a law may create two types of issues. What are those? One is called as an operational issue. The other is what is called as the substantive issue. What is this operational issue? So a law is created. In case there is an issue, there is an interpretation with respect to law that is required, we head to the judiciary. So when we go to the judiciary, because of a law, there might be operational issues. What are these operational issues? This may be with respect to the court procedures. Let's say, for example, there is one of the person who wants to go to the court of law. What is the procedure that that particular person will have to follow? Is there any tribunal? Is there any other person that person has to approach or that company has to approach? So the sentencing and the appeal and the procedure how he can approach to the court of law is the first procedure when it comes to the operational duties. Then we have the court administration. What is the administration all about? Let's say a new law is passed. This may also also require the court personnel as well to administer the proceedings. So when it comes to the second operational criteria, what we have to look at is the administration. So the administration here will look at the court personnel who are present in the court. Finally, when it comes to the operational thing, we also have to keep a check when it comes to the financing. So how many people are required, how salary has to be given, what is the increase or decrease when it comes to the budget allocation, will all be taken when it comes to the operational issues of a particular legislation. And at the same time, we also have to look at the substantive aspect as well. What is the substantive aspect? Just because there is a new law, there might be new set of cases that land up in the court of law. When it lands up in the court of law, what we actually witness is a change in the workload. Until then, until the new law was passed, the court might have seen about 1,000 cases in a particular month. But because there is a new legislation, it could also result in the spike of the activities of the court. The court may start seeing new number of cases as well. That is what is called as workload. So when we speak about judicial impact assessment, it is nothing but calculating the workload change in the judicial system, in the judiciary. Why? Because there are operational procedural changes that are introduced, because there have been substantial law changes that are introduced, which ultimately will mean that there can be more workload to the judiciary. So what we have to understand is that whenever a legislation is passed, whenever a tribunal is established, whenever you're taking away certain powers, all that you have to do is to understand the workload consequences to that particular system. Why does this become very important? When we speak about Indian judicial system, we always complain that there is lot of delay when it comes to the execution of a particular case. It can be judgment passing, so on and so forth. So what we know is that justice delayed is justice denied. If we have to bring reforms in the system, in the judicial system, bring changes in the judicial framework, and plan and manage the judicial reforms, what we require is this judicial impact assessment. So in the present situation, ideally the central government should have gone through this judicial impact assessment. Why? Because they are removing the appellate jurisdiction. If they are removing the appellate jurisdiction, what will be the operational changes that will be introduced? How will it cause a delay? Will it cause a delay, or it will enhance the procedures? All these studies should have been ideally being conducted by the central government as espoused by the Supreme Court in Roger Matthew versus South Indian Bank. But in the present situation, it has failed to go through or implement or get an assessment and evaluation with respect to the judicial impact assessment is the second major criticism. The third major criticism is in reference to the tenure of the chairpersons and members of the tribunal. Let's say we have one of the tribunals that will be created by the government. When this tribunal is created, you require people as well. These people will be one from the technical department, the other from the judicial department. It is these people who will be seated on the panel, and ultimately they do declare the orders as well as judgment. For this, what we require is the search and selection committee. According to Madras Bar Association versus the Union of India Supreme Court judgment, the composition of the search cum selection committee, yes, it has been taken care by the government when it comes to the tribunals. But when you have the chairpersons, the members of the tribunals who will be part of the tribunal, they should have been given a tenure of about 5 years according to this particular judgment. But whereas the government gone wrong, the government has only given about 4 years for these members who will be part of the tribunal. So does it mean that the central government is not actually listening to the orders of the Supreme Court? Yes, says the author. The fourth major criticism, as discussed by the author, is the establishment of the National Tribunals Commission. This National Tribunals Commission is very important. It will act as an independent body for what? For supervising the functioning of the tribunals, application orientation, for appointment of those people who will be part of the tribunals, and in case they are violating any of the rules and regulations of the tribunal, then disciplinary action will be initiated by this National Tribunals Commission. It will also be one of the committees which will also help in search cum selection committee. But in the present situation, the government has not constituted the National Tribunals Commission is another major criticism. So the author here brings into another perspective to discuss some of the significant aspects of the National Tribunals Commission. When you speak about tribunals, where do you get the money from? It is from the executive. Who makes the major appointments? It is the executive. Who controls these people? It is the executive. Finances, infrastructure, personnel, and all the resources that is required for the effective functioning of an administrative tribunal is provided by the executive. So what we actually witness is that in case they want one of the judgments or an order in favor, there might be a possibility where we may see executive interference in the functioning of the tribunal, since everything is being undertaken by the executive. We may see instances of executive interference. As a result, there is independence which is violated, and if independence is violated, do you think justice will be delivered to the petitioners in this particular case? The second significant factor, as discussed by the author, is in reference to uniform administration across all the tribunals. What do we mean by it? Let's say we have the NGT, which is the National Green Tribunal, or let's say there is any other tribunal that is related to tax. So both of them have their own procedures, both of them have their own technicalities, but there are some ground realities, ground foundational aspects, the basic aspects for which what we require is the uniformity. When we have the uniformity, we may have the National Tribunals Commission, which will have a vigilant eyes about the functioning of this particular organization and tribunal. So setting the uniform administration and building the basics and foundational structure is very important, which will be done by the National Tribunals Commission. And finally, when we have all these aspects implemented, we will have a clear separation of the administrative and the judicial functions, and ultimately what we will see is independence of the tribunals apart from the executive interference. So the executive interference will be completely done away with, and what we will have is one such body which will be able to deliver justice to the petitioners. Before, we had the executive interference, and now with the establishment of the National Tribunals Commission, what we will have is given wings to this particular organization so that they can act independently as their own. Apart from this, this National Tribunals Commission may also be able to set the performance standards for the efficiency. What do we mean by it? There might be few people who are lethargic, there might be few people who might not be working as well, there might be few people who might be corrupted as well, but this particular organization and commission, since it has a vigilant eyes, it would be able to set performance standards, and if they are violating and if they are not able to meet the standards, disciplinary action can be initiated against them. So operationalization of the procedure for disciplinary proceedings can be taken up by this organization. So these are some of the significant aspects with respect to the National Tribunals Commission. So what is the way forward? As the Finance Ministry is currently the one which is looking into this particular aspect, before the establishment of the National Tribunals Commission, all the management issues will be taken by the Finance Ministry. Until we have the National Tribunals Commission which is established, a transition plan, a transition path will have to be decided by the Finance Ministry. So what we require is an evidence-based approach going forward, and all these aspects as discussed will have to be implemented, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says it is getting from bad to worse for women workers. Most of the articles that we have today are already discussed. We have discussed them all in couple of other CNAs in the past 1 month, 2 months as well. So what we will be focusing is on the add-ons, as these have already been discussed. So the first important factor this article is currently speaking is, when COVID-19 hit, it has hit almost all sectors of the economy except for few sectors which are seeing the boom. And when we look at people in person, what they have lost is the employment opportunities. Number of people have lost their livelihood means and mechanisms. They have shrunk into the area of poverty just when after first wave of COVID-19, when people were seen as empowering themselves because of second wave, what we are also witnessing is the middle class, the lower middle class are also entering the fold of poverty, which is where the author says it is not only this that is mattering, but of all this, it is the women who are the major sufferers. So the article here is primarily focusing on the issues and concerns inequalities exasperated during this particular period and raising inequalities, structural issues with respect to the women is what the authors are trying to communicate. When we look into 2020 and much prior to it, before COVID-19 hit, there were already issues with respect to employment of the women. Why were there issues? One, because of the patriarchal mindset. Why were there issues? Because of lack of good jobs to the women. Why were there issues? Because there were restrictive social norms as well, because women were not let to work out. And there is also a problem in the rural setup as well, that they would not be allowed to work at nights as well. But when you consider all these aspects, the majority of the household work will only be taken care by the women. So before 2020, before the COVID-19 hit, only 18% of the working age women were employed as compared to 75% of the men. Look at this inequality. Where is the parity? Is the first question the author is asking. Now let's understand what happens after 2020 when COVID-19 hit. The author here brings another important question and says that there is a widening gap between the employment provisions for the men and for the employment opportunities of the women. The author brings into picture that after the nationwide lockdown came up, women were facing these issues and it has grown worse and worse for the women. This is where the author brings into picture one of the statistics, that is from the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy Private Limited, which goes on to say that 61% of the male workers were unaffected during the lockdown, but only 19% of the women experienced this kind of security. So who had more job security? It is the men. So when it comes to the job security, women faced issues during the lockdown, but it is not the men, says the author. Let's look into the second statistics. 47% of the employed women who had lost jobs during the lockdown had not returned to work. The equivalent number of men was only 7%. So the women who had lost their jobs during the enforcement of the lockdown were not able to find the jobs. And what is the number of statistics? It is 47%. But only 7% had similar issues when it comes to men. So who are the major sufferers? It is the women. Followed by this, the author goes on to say men who had lost jobs during the lockdown, they were able to find the jobs as well. Even if they are not able to find the jobs as per the standards that they had previously worked, they were at least able to find the job with less salary or less amount or less wages. But when it comes to the women, they had very few options, says the author. Again, who's the major sufferer? It is the women. Now let's say there are women who are planning to enter the educational domain, or they are planning to enter the employment domain, and after their graduation they are looking for job, and the new entrants again face the issues of finding a job. This was comparatively greater for the women compared to the men, says the author. Women also tend to lose work disproportionately irrespective of the industry. So where are they confined to? Because they have lost their jobs, as we initially discussed, most of them are at their houses, and during the period of lockdowns there is further increase of the household work for the women, says the author. These are some of the statistics and criticisms and excesses that have been committed on the women. Added to this, there is domestic violence which is increased. Added to this, there is physical abuse that is happening. Why? Because men might have lost their jobs, and in that particular procedure, because they are not allowed to go out, they might have some exaggerated feelings, which is where they are also inflicting physical violence of the women. As a result, what the author in this particular case says, that we have to take certain measures and terms and conditions going forward. What are these measures that one has to take? We have one of the important employment provision in the form of Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which is present at the rural level. This has to be expanded. Greater number of women will have to be provided job opportunities. Unskilled labor will have have to be provided job opportunities is the first recommendation given by the author. As much as we have something at the rural level, we also will have to come up with the Urban Employment Guarantee Act, similar in the urban areas where women will have to be recruited. The government of respective states will have to come up with community kitchens. They have to engage with the self-help groups as well, where these self-help groups can be employed for making of the PPE kits as well. Added to this, the government can think of giving COVID-19 hardship allowance, maybe at an amount of 5,000 or an amount of 6,000, whichever the government is comfortable with until the lockdown settles down. What will be the criteria, who will be the women, and the conditions and the guidelines will have to be drafted by the government of the respective states, and COVID-19 hardship allowance will have to be given to the women. Finally, what we also have to ensure is that as of now, the government of India is looking at coming up with a policy of national employment policy. What is this policy all about? This policy will give us a blueprint. It will give a broader area as to how we would be in a position to improve the job opportunities in India. So this is a plan in picture. There is committee that is appointed. It is already looking into it, how to expand the job opportunities, what are the various initiatives that the government may have to take when it comes to the skill development, how investment provisions will have to be included, and what are the other policy interventions that can be brought about to increase the job opportunities. That is what is the national employment policy all about, which is in the pipeline. So going forward, all the constraints and issues with respect to participation of the women when it comes to the workforce will also have to be taken by the National Employment Policy Committee, is the recommendation given by the author. So what is the conclusion that we can draw? As of now, we have been seeing a lot of issues, gender parity issues, inequality, structural flaws, which has exacerbated the issues of women in the society. So going forward, if we can initiate universal basic services program, and if we can provide more social sector schemes and programs for the enrichment of health education of these women, what we would be able to set is parity in the society, generate equality, and ultimately bridge the differences that is existing in the society, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article is speaking about the road from Ladakh is paved with disruptions. Again, as I've told you, these are articles we have already discussed, but to give you a brief gist, we have had issues with China along the line of actual control. Tensions had increased between both the countries along the line of actual control. As these tensions started increasing, we also lost our soldiers as well. As many as 20 soldiers who had fought with the Chinese, and these valiant soldiers had also lost their lives as well. After this, there was negotiations between India and China. We did disengage as well along the line of actual control, but in spite of both the armies, soldiers withdrawing from this particular reign where tensions had increased, what we currently see is that in spite of the disengagement, there is an apprehension along both the sides. So what we have is an unstable relationship between India and China. All this has been discussed previously in our CNS. But what we have to understand is the geopolitical importance of the COVID-19. When COVID-19 hit, most of the countries were suffering. To a limited extent, we were not impacted. And when we consider the populations of India and many other countries, we were able to put a stop to a limited extent in the COVID-19 wave 1. So what did India do? India is also called as the pharmacy of the world. So what did India do? India was able to export vaccines as well. That particular program was what is called as the Vaccine Maitri. So what is this Vaccine Maitri? India is the pharmacy of the world. So we had our own vaccines, one in the form of Covishield, the other in the form of Covaxin. So we started exporting these vaccines to multiple countries, whether we take the example of Brazil or we take the example of South Africa. And in fact, we had also promised our immediate neighbors like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, so on and so forth, that we would be providing vaccines to all these countries. This was a promise India made during the first wave, where it was able to stop the rampage of COVID-19 to a limited extent. This was also a scenario where India was also engaging in a competition with China or increase the vaccine diplomacy. But in the present situation, what we are witnessing is totally different. What was started as a vaccine Maitri is currently not working out, and China has taken an upper hand, says the author. Why? Because India was not able to manage the second wave. What we are currently witnessing is huge spike and increase in the number of COVID-19 cases. We have to give these vaccines to our own people as well, which is why there is a compulsion that these vaccines will have to be utilized internally for the domestic purpose, and we may not be in a position to export to other countries, which is where all these countries like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are importing the vaccines from China, and India in an indirect way may have broken the promise of giving vaccines to these countries, says the author. So after the second wave has come, it is advantage China. Why? Because vaccines are now being sent from China to Bangladesh and at the same time to Sri Lanka, says the author. Apart from this, China is also engaging with all the South Asian countries except with India. It has also organized meeting with the South Asian countries, which is where it is increasing its presence in South Asia, but India is not able to do so, says the author. India, along with other Quad countries like United States of America, Japan and Australia, had also pledged and promised to deliver a billion doses of COVID-19 vaccine throughout Indo-Pacific region by the end of 2022. Why? Because it wanted to control the influence of China. We know for the fact that China has huge pockets, big pockets, and it would also be able to spend money in all areas as well. Why? Because it wanted to capture the vaccine diplomacy as well. And what did India do? India also engaged into agreement with the Quad countries, and it wanted to provide vaccine to the Indo-Pacific region. But in the present situation, because we were not able to handle the second wave of COVID-19, the promise that we had made, we may not be able to keep it up, says the author. That happens to be the second major issue. Apart from this, we had also made commitments to other poor countries under Gavi's COVAX scheme. Are we able to keep it up? No, says the author. As a result, what China has currently is advantage when it comes to the vaccines is the first argument. Apart from the vaccine Maitri, the article also discusses about United States of America, India as well as China's relationship. Normally, when we speak about United States of America and India's relationship, USA became closer to India primarily because we were the important power hub when it comes to the South Asia. We were also one of the aspiring economic powerhouses as well. We have extreme control when it comes to the South Asia, which is why United States of America became closer to India. Why? One of the primary reasons being that we are economically superior when it comes to the South Asian region. But now what we are witnessing is that we were not able to control and keep a check on the COVID-19. So assuming that the present rate of interest, what we can also look at the economic superiority in South Asia may comparatively be reduced. Why? Because China is having a major influence. When that happens, United States of America may not see India as a suitable or equal partner. We are saying it may not see. We do not know about it, but it may see India as not as an equal partner, but instead it may start dictating terms to India as well. When it starts dictating terms to India, and if India is supposed to and have to follow, that is when China's apprehension will start increasing, and that is when there'll be more issues between India and China, says the author. When United States of America is fiddling with relationship with India, where it does not see India as an equal partner, where it is sending its demands to India and India may have to meet it, in such a situation, India and China's relationship will again hinder, will again drop down, and will go in a ebb, says the author. These are some of the arguments with respect to this article, which is something new as discussed by the author. Now let's look into the next article. This article says using all options. The article here is primarily looking at increasing the production of the vaccines. What steps can India initiate so that we have enough number of vaccines so that these can be administered to the people of India? So all the provisions that the government can initiate is what is this article all about. Primarily, this article also focuses on India and South Africa's proposal. We have one of the videos that is recorded in Economy This Week Explained videos, and we also have discussed this particular issue about India and South Africa's proposal. What was the call of United States of America? So we will not be discussing this. The only thing that we would be discussing is about two important sections from the Indian Patent Act. What are these two important sections? One is Section 100 of the Patent Act. The other is Section 92 of this Act, which speaks about compulsory licensing. What is Section 100 of the Patent Act? This basically deals with the use of invention of the particular medicine or an invention by a patent holder for the government as well as its agencies. What do we mean by it? Let's say there is one of the patent holder. He might have created a new innovation. Let's say it is in terms of technology, or it might be in terms of health issues. Let's say a drug or a vaccine. So the government under Section 100 of the Patent Act has the power to make sure that this patented product can be used for the purposes of the government. So this can be used by the government as well as by its agencies and individuals for the use of the government. That is what is Section 100. The second important section that we have to focus is Section 92 of the Act, which deals with compulsory licensing. What is this compulsory licensing? When we speak about patents, these are the exclusive rights that are given to a patent holder. He has created something. This is an innovation. It can be a vaccine, it can be a technology. So exclusive rights is given to this patent holder where he has the permission to sell or import a particular product or a process for a limited period of time. It can be 15 years or it can be 20 years. So he has the exclusive right to manufacture this particular product. But now let's say there is a grave health emergency, or let's say for example there is an intervention that is required because the nation is going through some public health crisis, national emergency, or an extreme urgency. In such a situation, let's say A happens to be a patent holder and G happens to be the government which has given permission for that patent. But in case of grave crisis, public health crisis, national emergency, a third party B may be given permission to move away from this patent right so that B, which is an other company, would also be able to manufacture or produce a generic version of this vaccine or a product. So basically a compulsory licensing is where the patent holder's permission is not required, but you have an other company, not the patent company, and this company would be able to produce or manufacture a genetic version of the patented product. Why? So that the health crisis or an emergency can be overcome. So this particular procedure is clearly given in Section 92 of the Indian Patents Act. When this particular procedure is applied, what we will have is a declaration made by the Government of India, and this declaration will be issued in an official gazette. After this declaration has been made, we have the Controller General of Patents, Design and Trademarks, which will allow one of the organizations to produce this particular vaccine or any of the products. So this particular permission would be given by the Controller General of Patents, Designs and Trademarks so that that particular company would be able to manufacture for a limited period of time the number of units as well as the number of units for a particular period of time. So what we have is this particular provision which can again be used by the Government of India, and we already have enough limitations. So what the government has to do in the present situation is to enforce Section 92 of the Patent Act, says the author. So we already have certain limitations here as well. In case this particular generic medicine or a vaccine is being produced by an institute or by an organization, they will have to produce only those units as given originally in the framework, and it is also for a limited time period as well. After this particular time period is done, they would not be able to manufacture this particular patented product. So we already have enough limitations. So what would be the significance of this? When such an initiative is taken by the government under Section 100, under Section 69, what we will have is more affordable drugs. What we will have is increased availability of the vaccines and its supply, and ultimately we would be able to overcome the menace of COVID-19, after which we may allow that particular company to produce more vaccines if they require, is what is this article all about. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says artless and heartless. We have the Central Vista Developmental Project. This is an initiative taken by the central government for what? For construction of the new parliament building, new residence for the Prime Minister of India and the Vice President. Now you might ask me a question. What was the need of this particular project? When you look into the existing project, when you look into the existing parliament, the parliament does not have enough security provisions. Not in terms of physical security, but what we are speaking is in terms of earthquake proofing. The building is not strong enough, and we do not have also fireproofing system as well. Yes, we do have, but it is not meeting the international standards. So on one side we do not have the earthquake proofing, on the other side standard fireproofing system is not present, and at the same time we have to look at the space as well. Currently we do not have enough space. In the near future we may have more parliamentarians who will be sitting in the parliament, which would not be accommodated in the parliament, which is why there was a need for initiating the Central Vista project. Added to this, the central government has also said with this particular Central Vista project, the government would be able to save about 1,000 crores, which is currently being paid as the rent expenditure, which is why there is the importance of the Central Vista project. What happens to the existing parliamentary house? The existing parliamentary house will be conserved as an archaeological asset of the country. But what is the question and the discussion of this article? A new building is 100% required. All this is very important. But the author here primarily goes on to say, should we stop at this particular juncture? Why? Because as of now, we have been seeing increasing cases of the pandemic. So the focus of the government in the present situation should be primarily focusing on the pandemic, should be about overcoming this particular second wave and all the issues of COVID-19, and instead the money and energy should not be invested on the Central Vista redevelopmental project, is the first point made by the author. Added to this, when we have to construct the Central Vista project, there might be a requirement of demolishing the National Museum of India, the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, and the National Archives as well. So the author in this particular case goes on to say there have been experts who have written to the Prime Minister of India and have requested for the postponing of this particular demolition. Why? When it comes to the National Museum or with respect to the Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts or the National Archives, there might be number of treasures which needs to be handled with care. If because there might be a need for demolition, there has to be hurrying of the process, and as a result there might be few things or few treasures which may have to be transferred and moved as well. During that particular process there might be the risk of loss or mishandling of the particular case. So as a result, what they have requested right now is to stop this particular process, postpone this whole process, so that the whole issue of pandemic is sorted out, and after which a planning and expertise can be taken up. If demolition is required, we can also initiate it, but as of now the primary focus should be on fighting the menace of COVID-19, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Discuss the concerns associated with abolishing appellate tribunals and the need for establishing National Tribunal Commission. Next question. COVID-19 pandemic is having devastating social and economic consequences, further exacerbating inequalities and creating new vulnerabilities for women. Comment. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. Do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.